In this series, we are looking at how to make remote work actually work for us instead of becoming a headache from hell. In order to make remote work smooth, we need to have 3 pillars in place: practicality, legality, and productivity. We started our series by focusing on the practicality pillar, and in the last video, we discussed the option for your core setup, which is cloud software versus remote servers. Just a quick reminder that the core setup is your backbone for everything else. So if you didn't watch that video, please just stop this one and immediately go back and watch it. But in this video, we are going to carry on discussing software. We have already dabbled in this section by looking at that backbone as if you are going into the cloud, you need to decide, if you're going remote, you need to decide, are you going into the cloud or are you setting up your own remote server? But once you have that settled, you have more software to think about. You need to think about your client work. Obviously, you're an accounting firm, so you need to pick accounting software. That was already part of your pros and cons when looking at the remote server and the cloud options. But why I'm listing it all is because you might want to consider selecting a particular software for your remote working team. What I mean is that you have the option of making a distinction should you want to. So your team sitting in the office might work on Pastel, Sage, QuickBooks, and Xero. But when you begin to look at remote working options, you could choose to say that your remote team will only work on Xero, or that they only work on Xero and QuickBooks Online. And then you divvy up your workloads according to the software that your team members are using. I just wanted to point it out that you do not have to take your entire organization into the cloud simply to have a remote working setup. You can split it. There are a lot of other reasons we recommend taking your entire organization into the cloud, but that is not what this series is about. It's about getting ready to have a remote working team, and you can do so by making a distinction between what your remote team works on and what your local team works on. And you also need to think about the other aspects of your work. If you offer tax services, if you offer payroll, all of these things have cloud options, and you need to spend some time thinking about what you are going to use and whether or not you're going to restrict the type of work your remote team does or the software that they do it on. So you're going to look at your accounting software, but it's definitely not the only software you need to think about for remote teams. You also need to know what you are going to be using for document sharing and management. So how is your remote team member going to access the information that they need, and how are they going to share their completed work with you and the rest of the team? This can all be done on email, but that's not efficient at all, and I promise you it will fast dissolve into tears and headaches. It is much better to choose a document management system or an office system, something like Google Workspace or Office 365, or you can go with a file storage system only like Dropbox. Doesn't really matter what you use. What matters is that you think about how your team is going to access, file, store, and share information. Then you need to think about how you are going to monitor this work. How do you and your management team know how much work has been done and what hasn't been done? How do you work out where the problems are, where the bottlenecks are? How can you be confident that the deadlines have been met? For all of this, you need some form of project management software. Now, you can do this using checklists in Excel. Although if you decide to go the Excel route, I do recommend Google Sheets instead, simply because it can be shared online and updates can be seen by everyone at the same time. There is nothing wrong with using Excel checklists, but do bear in mind that the bigger your organization grows, the more complex those checklists will become, the more onerous it will become to monitor them, and the greater the danger of human error that will enter in. So we do recommend that you rather consider task or project management software, something like ClickUp, Asana, Monday.com. There are so many to go and have a look at and choose from. Xero and QuickBooks even have their own versions built into their software. They're limited, but they work. And then there are more complex versions that have actually been built for accounting firms. There's things like Carbon or Pixie. So again, there are many, many, many. And I'm not naming the only options available to you, nor am I naming the ones that we necessarily recommend. I'm actually simply naming the ones that come to my mind first. We don't make specific recommendations here at Human Edge because we want you to find software that works for you. This is your firm that you are monitoring, your clients that you are producing outcomes for. So the software you pick must work for your firm, but make sure you do choose how you are going to monitor the work and have your system in place before you appoint a remote working team member. And then you are going to need what we call staff management software. So your Excel checklists or your project management software may help you monitor the progress of your work, and they may help you determine what has and has not been done, but that is only the work. You also need information and feedback about your remote working staff member. The first thing we look at under this umbrella is timekeeping. If you bill per hour, you are going to need time tracking software. Once again, Excel is an option, but there is other software such as Clockify, which allows you to track time and to track time per project. I think Xero and QuickBooks also has built-in time tracking. And the nice thing about these time tracking software options is that they give you, as the business owner, reporting options. So you can check the productivity and efficiency of your staff, both individually and as a team, by pulling reports. Now you can obviously do that in Excel as well, but only by spending your very precious time working it all out, not by just simply clicking a button. Some of your practice or project management options like Carbon actually include a time tracker, and like I said, QuickBooks and Xero do. So you don't necessarily need to invest in a separate piece of software, but you do have to think about how your remote worker is going to be tracking their time. Even if you don't bill per hour, it can still be a very good profitability, efficiency, and capacity exercise to track time in the organization. I personally don't bill per hour in my firm, but all of my team members track our time. I track my time. This is for our own benefit. I mainly use it to flag toxic clients, so the clients that are taking up more energy than they are worth, but there's plenty of reasons to track time, and there is more than one way to do so. Another staff management tool that you are going to need is a communication tool. You need a way to stay in touch. Now, yes, you can phone, text, and email each other, and that's perfectly fine, but you probably also want something for virtual meetings like Zoom or Google Meet or Teams. Firstly, because it's good for your remote worker to get to see your face from time to time, but mainly because these platforms give you the ability to share your screen and to train or give constructive feedback very easily with demonstrations. So you definitely need a virtual meeting tool, but you also want something along the lines of Slack or Teams that give you the option of group chats. This is not just to communicate about work, it's also to foster a sense of community. Remember that your remote team member is sitting at home alone. That sense of isolation will only be exacerbated if the rest of the team is in the office together. So being able to engage in group chats and banter will give them a sense of belonging, and it will enhance team building and collaboration within your team, despite where they are sitting. It's also a good idea to have some way of sharing client notes and comments so that your knowledge is shared across the team, particularly when it comes to fiddly posting rules or a client's preference. You want to be able to share that communication in case someone is sick or not there or can't answer the phone. Now, again, most practice management software will actually have that built in as well. So you don't necessarily need a separate tool, but you do need one. So you need to think about how you're going to do these things. And the third staff management tool you need to think about is software that tracks performance. Your project management or task management tool will track work progress, but it won't tell you how well that work is being done. Delays in the timeline can indicate a competence problem, but it could also just be that your team member is waiting on a non-responsive client. So you can't rely on just the task management tool to tell you if your team member is doing a good job. You also need something that helps you to monitor actual performance alongside work progress. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of the software categories that you need in your business, but they cover the ones that are most important for making remote work work. So your remote working arrangement with your employees will not work if you have not thought through these 4 main categories and 3 subcategories. You need to have these things in place in order to effectively monitor and engage with a remote working staff member. When you are choosing your software, you want to keep 3 criteria top of mind. The first is features. You want to know that this software does what you need it to do. Your firm is yours. You have your own way of doing things, and the software you choose must work for your firm. You can't just copy what someone else is using, and it's silly for you to pay for features that you don't need. So you need to make sure that you're getting what you do need. The next thing you look at is price. And I don't mean be cheap. Price isn't important because you want to get it as low as possible, although you do want it low, but it's important to look at because you want to make sure you are paying for value. We never recommend going with the cheapest option just because it's the cheapest option. If the most expensive option gives you what you need and the others do not, then that most expensive option is the right one. But make sure that you do a proper value comparison when checking price and that you are comparing features you actually need, not being distracted by bells and whistles and shiny things. And the third thing you want to look at is support. We are accountants, not IT specialists. So when things go wrong, and they will, you want a software provider who gives you help and support. This is more valuable than any fancy feature that any software can give you. Take the time to read the reviews online, not just about the software itself, but about the provider and their help desk. If you keep these 3 things top of mind and you compare software according to these 3 things, you will find software that works for you and your firm. If you are not tech savvy, if the abundance of software choices overwhelm you, because there are millions of them, the Xero ecosystem alone has over 800 apps in it. It's probably more by now. So it can be extremely overwhelming. And if you are lost and you don't know where to start, my advice is to ask an expert. The same way you have convinced all your clients to trust you with their accounting, you can trust someone else with your technology. We personally recommend App Advisory Plus because they are amazing. at helping you build the exact tech stack that you need for your firm, but there are other tech stack advisors out there. They're not the only one. So if you're feeling lost and overwhelmed, call on an expert and get them to help you find the right software for you, for your firm as a whole, and for your remote workers. But please take your tech stack seriously. It is a very important part of getting your remote work to actually work. And I do hope this video didn't completely overwhelm you. I hope it gave you a nice overview of the software that you will need in place for your remote worker. In the next video, we are moving off software and we're going to chat about hardware.